Thanks,
go.
Jake.
Yeah. It's going to be a lot of talking tonight.
Yeah.
Hello. I'm the chair of the Parks and Rec Commission, and I'd like to welcome everyone here for coming to such a well-attended meeting over such an important topic. We are fortunate to have a lot of people here today. I want to give a heads up to the students that are here that we will be breaking for everyone for a few minutes at 8 o'clock so the students can have their community service slips signed off, so you can plan accordingly. Also, because of the room arrangement, the presentations will be at the front of the room, and after public comment, all questions raised will be addressed, and I'd like to introduce, in case you can't see their names, from the City of Morgan Hill Police Department, Jerry Newmeyer, City of Morgan Hill Fire Department, Jamie Norton, City of Morgan Hill Community Services, Mr. Yulo, City of Morgan Hill Community Services, Mr. Cristione, Commissioner Green, Vice Chairperson Commissioner Cheek, Commissioner Seehafer, Commissioner Kelly, Commissioner Lo Cicero. From City of Morgan Hill Public Works, Carl Bjorky, my apologies. City of Morgan Hill Public Works, Mr. David Gittleson. From Open Space Authority, Mr. Derek Newman, and Open Space Authority, Ms. Andrea McKenzie. We'd like to go ahead and open the meeting and also make a motion to the agenda change to move reviewing the minutes to the next scheduled PRC meeting. Can we have a second?
Oh, I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we want to call to order all commissioners that appear present except
We do roll call attendance.
roll call
Chair
attendance.
Lizer,
Present.
Vice Chair Cheek,
Here.
Commissioner LeGreen,
Here.
Commissioner Kelly, Commissioner Lo Cicero, Commissioner Seehafer, Commissioner Van Kulen.
He's recusing himself from the item.
You want to say it?
Commissioner Van Kulen's recusing himself from this item, and since it's a single item on the agenda, that's why he's not here.
And I'd like to declare the posting of the agenda. Pledge of Allegiance. Marty?
Okay. Please stand. Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, we're open for public comments for items not listed on the agenda.
We have one speaker slip. It's from Mr. Muirhead.
That would be great. Thank you, Mr. Muirhead.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, commissioners and staff. For the record, my name is Doug Muirhead. I live in Morgan Hill. I wanted to alert you to two items. One is an event, one is a grant opportunity. The event is by the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition, and Stanford Healthcare are presenting a bike summit in Palo Alto, September 30th, 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. There will be some nationally known speakers as well as panel discussions. I have one copy of the handout if anyone wants to learn about this the old-fashioned way. My other announcement for you is a grant opportunity. Next week, CEO Goldie will be telling the Water District Board that staff is getting ready to issue an RFP for a total dollar amount of $571,000 for grant funding to provide new access to trails. This is part of their Safe Clean Water program. The RFP should be available the first half of September. Application materials on their website. I wanted to mention this to you today because after your September meeting, we won't see you again until late in November. And there are two key dates for this. One is there will be a workshop for interested parties on October 1st, and the RFP responses are due by November 21st. So it's possible that people would like to take a look at that, and maybe we could add even more trails here in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll motion to adopt the agenda with the change of moving the consent calendar items to the next scheduled PRC meeting.
Second.
Motion's been of adopting the agenda with the changes has been second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Adoption passes. Confirmation of note taker is Commissioner Kelly and Mr. Yulo. Consent calendar. Can I have approval of the regular oh, sorry. And now we move on to the El Toro access strategy. First, we will have presentation and then questions from the commission. And when it's public comment, there's so many people here. We are requesting that you limit your speaking to 3 minutes. And there will be time to have all questions addressed that are brought up at the end of public comment. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Dave Gittleson, Associate Engineer for the City of Morgan Hill. I've got a 15-20 minute presentation for you regarding the access strategy for El Toro Trail. This is also posted on the website as well. So let's jump right in and get started. First, I wanted to introduce the project team, but we kind of already went over that, so I'm going to skip this particular slide. So why are we all here? We're here to discuss the access strategy and what it is. So basically the purpose of an access strategy is to identify the trail access points to El Toro Mountain with appropriate trailhead amenities in a manner that makes the trail available to as many citizens as possible while not overly burdening any particular neighborhood. Once the trail access points are identified, the city could then engage landowners about acquiring property rights to further the access strategy. So why are trails so desirable? Trails are desirable for recreational demands of a growing city. There are nationwide trends to have trails in new neighborhoods. Top-rated recreational activities can be provided by trails, hiking, jogging, dog walking, so forth. It also promotes healthy lifestyle living, and it is an asset to the whole community. So for this particular project, the trail objectives, it's a little lengthy, so bear with me here. They are important, and we have created a bulletin board over there just to remind everybody what the objectives are. So for number 1, develop and implement a community trail system on El Toro Mountain consistent with the adopted Trails and Natural Resources Study. Develop a multi-location access strategy that provides community access to El Toro Mountain in a manner that provides for adequate amenities and respects neighborhood needs. Involve the community in the decision-making process and address neighborhood concerns. Partner with the Open Space Authority to acquire land, maintain the trail system, and provide educational opportunities. Design a comprehensive and effective safety and security plan that is fiscally sustainable. Restore the existing vertical trails to a natural condition by planting native California species. Develop a Friends of El Toro community trail program to help maintain and keep the trail clean. A little bit of project background. So late in 1989, the city purchased a 42-acre parcel for land for open space and to prevent development for about $1 million. The open space also recently purchased a hillside parcel just south of El Toro Mountain with a connecting trail system. A trail system on El Toro Mountain was included in the Trails and Natural Resources study. And El Toro, the project is consistent with the Open Space Authority's Santa Clara Valley Green Print, which is a detailed land and resource conservation vision that's going to help guide them. Later in 2010, the city purchased the Acton property, 18-acre site, and along with that purchase, an easement was also provided at the end of Villa Grande Street. So this is map 6 from the Trails and Natural Resources study. It basically shows in this highlighted area trail systems that were programmed during this master plan and was approved by council in 2007. So what does a trail system look like now? This is exactly what it looks like. These are informal trails that are up on the mountain. They're not open to the public. The idea here is to convert the informal trails into a formal trail system, and by doing that, it would provide better access for more users. It would provide better and faster emergency access, and it would also help clear up property and trespassing issues as well. Some of the informal trail conditions right now, we've got environmental degradation of the mountain. We've got a view shed impact. It's unsightly. You can see the trail going up the mountain from pretty far away. There's private property trespassing, and there's nuisance and vandalism to some of the existing gates. So this is a slide of a conceptual trail plan we presented to the Villa Grande neighborhood in June of 2012. We wanted to get their input on the proposed location at the end of the street because we've already got an easement purchased for that. And the neighborhood provided feedback from that. And this is their feedback, condensed. Quiet street, now dealing with non-resident pedestrian traffic and increased noise, concerns about non-neighborhood trail users and trail user vehicles, noisy trail user vehicles, loitering, restroom accessibility, potential for users to start fires and deter wildlife. And in that meeting, there were a few people that actually supported the trail. So, moving on to the access strategy approach. Our approach is, number one, to create multiple trail access points. So the idea behind this is instead of having one, you have 2 or 3. It spreads out the user impacts. Not everybody will go down the same street. You'll have less people. Creating one primary trailhead. The location of that we're looking at south of DeWitt near the church, existing church, West Hills Church. The idea behind there is that would be the ideal location to provide adequate parking and restrooms and all the amenities someone might need when they're visiting Morgan Hill, maybe from San Jose or San Martin, or maybe just even locals from Morgan Hill. So we'd want to focus that primary trailhead south of DeWitt. We also want to promote the trail system as a healthy recreation alternative for the residents. 5, we want to create a recessed trailhead. So for access points at Alkire, Villa Grande, and Maine, there would be one recessed trailhead, and the idea behind this is that it would draw people away from the end of the streets and minimize loitering. Number 6, we want to actively work with the affected neighborhoods to create a system that respects their privacy. We also want to take advantage and promote the existing parking facilities that we have here at the library and City Hall. We also have restrooms in those facilities as well. Number 9, design and implement a comprehensive trail sign program. So the idea behind that is it would be, we would put up trail signage to direct people where to go, where to park, and where the restrooms are, and so forth. Number 10, considering emergency response as a factor, multiple trailheads improves the response time and access for police and fire. Item 12, establishing a Friends of El Toro volunteer program. This will help promote the trail. It'll create weekly, daily users and trash pickup as well. 12, actively work with the Open Space Authority to assist with trail maintenance, education, and native species protection. And finally, 13, engage property owners about acquiring property rights to further the access strategy. So this slide shows the property currently owned by the city. It's within the yellow boundary. I'll point out a few things. The city does not own this particular parcel. That's privately owned. And the parcel I was talking about earlier that the open space owns is down here. They purchased this parcel, and it has a connecting trail system. And this is essentially the peak of El Toro, and you can see on this map that the city does own the face of the peak of the mountain. So this is a summary sheet, a map. It shows the trail access strategy. The main points to point out here are primary trailhead, parking, restroom facilities intended for visitors down south of DeWitt near Spring. Another access point at the end of Dunn, shown here, and a multi-access points here, one at Alkire, one at Villa Grande, and one at Maine. So let's look at each one of those with a little more detail. It's hard to see from here. So here's the primary trailhead located here. So this would provide a large parking lot again, restroom facilities, all the amenities one would need for someone visiting Morgan Hill. Plus, this would provide another emergency access point up the mountain as well, because there's an existing trail there. It's about 12 feet wide, but it is dirt. We also have here a secondary trailhead option. The city owns the portion of property highlighted in red. This also could provide great connectivity to the neighborhood down next to Community Park. This is the Dunn Avenue access point. This is a critical access point. This particular line in blue is a paved road. It would be the primary access for emergency vehicles and fire access, and it would be the fastest route up the mountain. So this map depicts neighborhood access and shows multi-access strategy with access points at Alkire, Villa Grande, and Maine, and currently there are trail access spots at these locations. This also shows the location of the recessed trailhead. It's intended to again bring people away from the streets and into the trail itself. In order for the city to construct or utilize this multiple access strategy, the city would have to purchase land highlighted with the red dash on it. And I have a close-up picture of the next slide. So what was shown in the red dashed line is now shown in the blue highlighted line. The city already owns parcel 1, that's the Acton parcel. We purchased that with 18 acres. Parcel 2 is privately owned at the moment, and the blue area is what we would need in order to put 3 access points there. If the city does not purchase the property in blue, it could be developed into 3 potential home sites depicted, and there is with a court at the end of Via Grande. You can sort of see the 3 potential home sites. So there'd be 1 there, 1 there, and 1 there. However, the city would like to purchase that, preserve it as open space, and use it for trail access points. So what happens to the existing trail that goes up straight up the face of the mountain? Well, our plan is to restore it, essentially erase it so it can't be seen anymore with native trees. In the meantime, while it's going through that process, we'll probably have to put up some fencing and signage as well to keep people off of it. Proposed trail users and trail hours. So we expect hikers, dog walkers, runners, and but we want to leave open the possibility to evaluate other potential user groups. Typically for trail hours are usually sunrise to half hour after a sunset. At this point, I'd like to turn 2 slides over to the fire and safety experts, Jamie and Jerry.
For the police department, we've been working with other city departments and CAL FIRE and other community members to try and develop a plan or a safety plan to ensure that the trail is safe as possible and enjoyable, and we'll continue to do so after this meeting, depending on what you decide to do and City Council.
From a fire department or a fire risk assessment, we found no evidence that increased trail use actually increases the number of fires. There were some unsupported statistics out there that stated that it actually deterred users with increased traffic. Next slide, please. This is a map of the historically large fires that have been in and around El Toro. I believe it dates back almost 25 years to the 2 that are actually on El Toro. The big one kind of in the south, I guess that would be southeast, that's kind of on the base of El Toro. By having these trails, what are in there now, that would actually provide shaded fuel breaks and eliminate some of the vegetation, therefore providing holding points and anchor points for us to minimize the size of the fires in the future. This would also enable us to use the mountain as a training site for volunteers. And then our biggest concern has been medical aids in and around the trail. And people get up there, they don't know where they're at, so trying to call 911 and tell us where they're at on a trail system that's not marked has been difficult. By having these well marked, and then some type of intermittent signage up there where they can identify how far up the trail they are, it would help us for access. As well as the increased maintenance of the trails would provide better access for us as well.
Great, thank you. See a lot of sleepy faces out there, so only a couple more slides, so hang in there, please. Ongoing trail maintenance, the city and the Open Space Authority would like to jointly work together to figure out a way to, the best way to maintain the trail and keep it at a high level of safety. And the city also envisions Friends of El Toro volunteer group to help walk the trail, keep an eye on it, and collect trash on a weekly basis. Trail funding, in case anybody is interested, this project was approved in the fiscal year 14-15 capital improvement budget for El Toro for $1,030,000, And in addition, there's also another $350,000 budgeted for open space land that could be used for land acquisitions. Staff recommendations. Staff recommends approving the access strategy, including the following. Continue to involve the community in the decision-making process. Partner with the Open Space Authority to acquire land and develop a maintenance agreement for the trail system. Develop a Friends of a Toro Trail volunteer program. Develop a safety and security plan. And finally, engage property owners about the access opportunities. Next steps would be to present to City Council to consider the access strategy. Then you could begin the design and environmental process and property acquisition, and finally construction. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to open this for questions from the commissioners. Mr. Commissioner Lucicero? Commissioner Kelly?
Thank you for the presentation. I have a couple questions. The West Hills parking lot, you said it was large. Do we have a number of spaces, number of cars that might accommodate?
I guess that's
just ballpark.
We haven't established the exact number of vehicle parking at that location yet.
Okay. Do you think that would be able to cover all the vehicles visiting, or would still need the city-owned lots?
It's hard to say how many vehicles would actually visit the trail system. I've asked different counties and other parks, and there's no formula to estimate how many parking spaces you would need.
Do you think there would be more than 25 spaces available at the West Hills Church?
I believe so.
Okay. Also, on one of the slides, it talked about other potential user groups, and it had a picture of a mountain biker. I don't know if that's alluding to the trails being open to bicycles perhaps in the future, or what other potential user groups explore?
The intent is to leave open the option for bicyclists at some point, but it would need to be evaluated. That has not been evaluated at this point.
And then lastly, on the staff recommendation slide, the first point was continue to involve the community in decision-making process. What other ways will you go about that to keep gathering input and keeping the neighborhood community involved?
Do you want me to take that one?
We can hold meetings. We can keep them informed throughout the design process as well. There's also an environmental process in which studies the environmental impacts, and that is also circulated throughout the community as well. And the community is welcome to provide input on that as well.
Additionally, after the commission makes a recommendation, the council would review the access strategy too, which would be another opportunity for public input on this item, because after the recommendations made by the commission, there could be modifications to the strategy before it goes to council. So there'd be another opportunity to look at it again on this specific item.
Right.
Just one more question that came up through an email that was written through a community member. What measures might be taken to keep hikers off private property? Would that include fencing or signage?
I think the idea here is if we need to purchase property, especially near the top, the idea would be to get more than what we need, so the trail wouldn't be up against the fence. There would be a buffer zone, so that would, in between that buffer zone, there's a lot of native plants. You can't just walk through that. It kind of looks like you can, but you can't. There's big brush up there. So the idea was the trail would be far away from where the fence would be, We could also put private property signs on the fence.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all my questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Seehafer?
Good questions. You actually had some in mind, and you answered them. I do have a recommendation. Should I hold off on that until the end? Okay. No questions.
Commissioner Cheek?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Actually, the clarification. So when you were giving your presentation, you were talking about I think the trail that goes up, that kind of a scar-like white line trail. So you're going to plant vegetation, or the idea is to plant vegetation
Yes.
to cover that. How long will that take? Or to...
Yeah, typically, at least what I've seen, plant establishment takes 2 to 3 years.
So, will any of the other trails be seen from like other parts of the city?
I think it would be impossible to hide, some of the trails completely. We're actually not building that many lineal feet of new trail. Let's see, let me get it on a slide. Uh-oh. So this blue line coming from the Villa Grande neighborhood up about halfway would be a new trail cut in the trees, more or less, not entirely, but it's somewhat in the trees. You can see most of the trees there, and then the other blue line that follows from the words "Proposed Trail System to El Toro Tank." That's already an existing trail. And you can hardly see it, and it's cut kind of in the mountain with vegetation grown over it. So the new trail would be significantly harder to see than what you see now.
Okay. They mentioned the volunteer group, Friends of the El Toro. How would that be developed? I mean, what would be the kind of basis for that?
The Open Space Authority has a volunteer program already in place. We would try to piggyback off of that.
And do you have any maybe figures or estimates of how many people use the trail maybe per day or week now?
We did do some studies earlier, a couple years ago, and let's see if my memory serves me right. I think there was, 25 users on a weekday? That's throughout the whole day, and then maybe 75 on a weekend. So the survey was done 7 in the morning till 5 or something, or 6.
Maybe too early, but estimate of how many people might use the trail, or is that kind of...
That would be purely speculation.
Well, I have a question for you. In terms of the fire safety, maybe I'd understand, but it sounded like you were saying a trail system would actually make the hill safer from fire, or is that...
Yeah, can you go back to the first slide with the informal trail? Currently? So currently, really, the only place to stop a fire on that is it's moving laterally north to south, where the current line exists that goes straight up the hill. When they improve these into regular trails, and then the one off to the right side of the slide, what we would propose is that we do what's called a shaded fuel break, and here and there take out brush or chamise. So looking at it from here, you wouldn't be able to tell that it was there, but it reduces the fuel load. And these would give us, if you can imagine where fires are, it would be very easy for us to box them in on the existing trails or use those as holding points. Since they're already existing, that just makes our job easier.
And it would be easier to access the fires to the trails too, I assume.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, and Captain Newmeyer, in terms of safety, I don't know if they've done studies for maybe other cities in terms of trails like this. Does it bring in people from bad people trying to do things, or maybe a number of people on the trail maybe dissuades people from going up there that might want to do?
Well, I perceive people that are in shape going up there, so it's a good thing.
So safety in terms of health.
Right, and I ran our calls for service the last 2 years for El Toro, and we've only had 5 calls for service, and 2 of them had to do with trespassing. The others were had parking complaints.
They had what?
Parking complaints.
Parking complaints.
So any concerns that we've had in the past, they've had to do with medical related calls, people that are lost, and they're maybe once or twice every 2 to 3 years. That's what we get. So those are our main calls that we get up there, and it's a joint response between us and the fire department. It goes up there to rescue the person or help them out.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Green?
So the goal is to have multiple access sites for this, and you showed in one of the slides there's one parcel, I believe it was the blue parcel, that has not been purchased and would need to be purchased by the city of Morgan Hill in order to have access at that site. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I wondered what the status is of that parcel, and if the city has been in contact, tried to purchase that at this point.
We've spoken to the owner, and he is a willing seller.
Okay.
I'm not sure he's going to wait forever, but so far he's been very patient. And
It's Mr. Gittleson mentioned. I think that's really what kind of drove us to kind of set one of the meetings, the meeting date, because we want to make sure that the access strategy makes sense with what we've outlined before the city would think about going forward to purchase the property.
Okay. And then as far as open and closure hours, will there be gates or something, and I imagine hours will be posted, but how will that be enforced?
typically, gates usually come in the design process, so we're still on the planning stages, so we haven't gotten to that issue at this point in time. We certainly could install gates. The problem with gates from access strategy is they got to get out and open the gate to get through. But if the community really wants it gated, we should consider it.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I have several questions. From the slideshow, it appears that the trail development would be in Phase 1 and Phase 2 with a separate trail. I'm looking at the El Toro Trail Access Strategy, where it highlights the different trails in different colors. It's my understanding from reading through everything that the final trail up to the top, called the Trail to the Peak, is scheduled for Phase 2. I would be interested in knowing what the time frame is that the city's looking at in developing the trails, and also in conjunction with Open Space Authority. Are they looking at developing them independent, or is it something where all the development would be going on at the same time and then all the trails would be opened at once?
Let me take that one. I'm Carl Biarchi, Public Works Director. I think that there would be a community desire to ultimately get to the summit. However, to make that experience worthwhile, I think you'd want access beyond where the city's property goes. The city's property does go to the peak, but it would be limited access there, and so to get maybe the best experience for hikers, we would probably need to acquire some properties up there. So we would be, between us and the Open Space Authority, have to approach those property owners and acquire the rights we need. We anticipate all of this kind of opening at once, not the top necessarily, but the lower stages in coordination with the Open Space Authority. So it'd all be, that lower portion certainly would be one common opening. Did we get all your questions on that one?
And the Trail to the Peak, where for the ideal trail experience, I believe you said you'd look at needing to acquire more property. Has there been conversation with the property owners, or do you know if that's even possible to acquire that property?
I would say there has been conversations both on the city side and on the Open Space Authority side. None recently, however. We've decided our best approach is to work on the bottom portion of this project, the access from our community before we really engage those properties up there.
Then let's say they decide not to sell. Is it correct to assume that you could still have a trail that goes up to the peak be built?
Yes, that's possible. We would take a look at that.
All right, thank you for clarifying. Oh, and when does the Open Space Authority look at, assuming this goes forward, building the trail? What time frame?
Hi, I'm Andrea McKenzie, General Manager of the Open Space Authority. Good evening, Madam Chair. We would coordinate the construction of the Open Space Authority's trail. In fact, we have it in our work plan now, but we will be coordinating that with the City of Morgan Hill so they happen at the same time. Obviously, you can see this is a very systems approach, so it's really important that we look at the multiple access points and the development of the parking lot to happen at the same time we're building the trails. So it would all happen together.
Thank you. And is there anything else that you'd like to comment on?
I just wanted to echo what Carl just said about the top of the peak. Obviously, people have been hiking up to the top of El Toro Mountain for many, many years. What we're attempting to do here is to formalize and make more safe and environmentally sustainable the trail system on the mountain. It seems to make the most sense to get the existing trail network in place, places for people to park and to gather, to get our environmental education systems going, our volunteer groups going. In the meantime, we continue to negotiate with the several landowners on the top of the peak. But mostly we need to get the system in place. The framework is the most important, and then we'll get to the peak.
Thank you. At this time, are there any other questions from the commissioners?
I do have another question. On the access strategy approach, slide number 7, it says taking advantage and promoting the use of existing public parking such as that found at City Hall, library facilities. By directing parking away from the neighborhoods, traffic congestion and noise levels will remain low near the access points. Besides providing parking at City Hall and library, what other strategies are in effect or will be in effect to direct parking away from the neighborhoods, such as no parking, parking restrictions, or is it just simply offering additional parking at City Hall? Or is there some other strategy to try to pull parking away from those neighborhood access points?
Right now, our strategy would be to encourage the use of those public parking lots that already exist. There are no places in Morgan Hill where we restrict parking on public roads. Having said that, if that's something that would be, if that's something we wanted to discuss down the road, we could. But right now, there's enforcement issues with doing that, and like I said, we've not done that anywhere else in Morgan Hill. But right now, we'd really like to encourage, by spreading out the access to multiple points and encouraging the use of the existing public lots, we don't think we'll need to restrict parking in the neighborhood.
That be through signage directing them to the public?
That's right, signage and any information we put out on our webpage that would indicate where we want people to park and access to the trails. And
so you said that's something that's not done on any other street in Morgan Hill as far as restricting?
To my knowledge, we don't have any restricted parking in any, that would, for neighborhood only.
Thank you.
To add one quick thing to that, how the access strategy lines up is the primary trailhead is where we would focus any signage directing people if they're driving to the trail. That's like if there was signage on the street, we wouldn't be even directing them likely to the library lot. We would be directing them to the trailhead off of DeWitt. That would really be part of the plan, and that's why that's listed as the primary trailhead, and everything else are the neighborhood access points. So that the signage would reflect that priority as well.
Are there any more questions from the commission? At this time, I'd like to thank everyone for their patience while we discussed everything, and we're going to move on to open public comment. I'd like to remind you that we have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
First speaker is Nancy Hillman.
Do I go up here or just from here?
Yes, go to the podium, please.
Thank you, Nancy. I should have clarified that. It makes it a little easier for everyone to hear.
Okay, I'm Nancy Hillman. Been a resident on West End since 1987 when they opened up the road there up at the base of El Toro. Our road is narrow. We don't have a full-size street. We don't have any sidewalks. We already get a lot of traffic, a lot of people coming up in their cars asking if I'm out gardening, where can I start the trail, where can I park? And it's hard because I know they hear it. They've, without even having it advertised, people already know about the trailhead, up done. I'm just not in favor of having, advertising that more as a trailhead. There's, it's a narrow street. We've got a big bend in the road. It's hard to pull out at times. And there's already a lot of trash up at the end of the cul-de-sac. My husband's up there constantly and bringing it back. So I'm all in favor of exercise and more hiking and places. I just feel that we do have a lot of places in Morgan Hill already. Some of the areas have great big parking facilities. The Coyote, the bike trail has a good parking facility. I'm not in favor of the Dunn trailhead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doug Muirhead.
Thank you, Doug Muirhead, Morgan Hill resident. So I appreciate staff and our partners creating an access strategy that has stages and alternatives. I am very much in favor of the primary non-neighborhood access point, in part because for me, coming from the south end of the city, it saves me over a mile of driving through residential streets past schools and churches as well as homes. Plus, if we can start with some of the OSA trails, it'll give us some practical experience with legal trail users because we haven't had the other kind for quite some time now. When I go to the county's Harvey Bear or OSA's Cañada del Oro, when I get there, that's the destination, and whatever facilities there are there at the base. So I'm not real comfortable with this idea of having these satellite locations for things like parking and restrooms. I really don't think using the public facilities is a very workable idea. We have limited hours, 8 to 5 for City Hall. The library sometimes opens at 10, sometimes it opens at noon, closes at different times, not available on weekends, not available on holidays. So, it's part-time facilities just don't work except for people that can really schedule their lives, in my opinion. The parking facilities, I actually went up to the church because I misunderstood. I thought we were going to use that lot rather than getting some additional land. On a Saturday afternoon, that lot is empty. On Sunday, it's completely full. Very narrow access just to come in and turn around, and then they have an overflow lot. The city parking facilities at City Hall and the library, especially the library, quite often there'll be a program there. That lot is full. Maybe DSC is the same way. I don't really know. And then when it comes to restrooms, probably other people don't get sweaty and dirty like I do, but at the end of a hike or a trail run, I'm a mess. And I really don't think we should be imposing that extra burden on the people that are trying to keep our public restrooms in our public facilities, clean for more normal users, residents. I do want to say, because I only had a quick look at the permanent volunteer liability release from OSA, 2 years ago, this commission, working with the city attorney, surprised me and made our liability release just very balanced, very fair, covers volunteers with workman's comp, provides an out if you don't want your medical decision taken out of your hands. And thank you.
Dennis and Joyce, I believe it's Cohen. I'm sorry if that's not the right name.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, I forgot to look at my watch. I was listening to you. That will help.
When I first came to Morgan Hill, I was stunned by the number of wildlife members we have in our population. Living in West Dunn at the halfway through to the end, I've lived there for 25 years. I think we're forgetting the quantity of wildlife that we have and how they're going to be so disturbed by 100 and some odd hikers going up each day. To me, that's going to be dangerous. I'm an equestrian. I've ridden horses all over the valley. I've hiked everywhere. And we have such wonderful places to hike and to be. Do we really need to spend that much money on this mountain behind me and really create an environment that's dangerous to all? Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have, I believe, time for one more speaker before the break, which would be Renee Felice.
Could you say the name again, please?
Renee Felice.
Renee Felice.
Okay, how about, okay.
Please come on up. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Renee Felice, and I also live on West Dunn Avenue. Most of us on our block are here tonight. We support the one primary access route. Our road is not functional as any kind of access route except for emergency. As Nancy Hillman suggested, when they built our road, they didn't give us a full road. It's a one-lane road. And so if cars park on both sides, which they do when hikers want to go up the mountain, we cannot see the people walking up the middle of the street because we don't have sidewalks either. And if we back out of our driveways or even come around the curve, as Nancy said, you cannot see the people because of the cars are parked on our street, on our one-lane street. It is not a good access road. Something no one else has mentioned so far, which my daughter said, and as a young person, you know, they know all. She said, Mom, once any of these access routes get on the internet, they will go straight to people's GPS. So whether or not there's a sign that says, please use the primary access route, this one's for local onlys, someone's going to drive straight up West Dunn Avenue and park as close to the trail as they can, which means on a narrow street. And that's it. Once it's out there and it's on GPS, there's no getting it back. That's another reason I would support the one trailhead and not the multiple trailheads. There right now is a big, huge hassle in Hollywood where they've provided GPS instructions to the Hollywood sign, and they're going up through neighborhoods that used to be quiet, you know, country neighborhoods. I think we should look to them before we decide to put an access point in our neighborhoods. Again, I agree, people are not going to park at the library. They're going to park as close to the trail as possible. Even though they're supposed to be hiking, they're not going to hike up a street from the library. Also, our good friend lives up at the end of the street and up the hill, and she's somewhat isolated up there, and we would all worry about her with lots of people walking through her yard.
Renee, you're at 3 minutes. You have another minute if you'd like to wrap.
Okay, I can wrap.
If you'd like to state a few more points.
Okay, thank you. I would suggest that you use the West Dunn Avenue as an emergency road only. And I was just going to mention, even though currently there's a gate with extension wrought iron on the road at the end of West Dunn Avenue, stairs have been carved into the hill so people can get around the gate and go up the hill right now, and there's no signs anywhere. So I can only imagine what it'll be like if this is chosen as an access point. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll be taking a brief break. Students, please come up and have your slip signed.
If anyone's in need of using the restrooms, they're through the door on the west side of the building over there. We'll direct you.
Can you guys hear me? So what's the topic is, any questions?
So from Tony or who?
No, police, fire are going to answer any questions or concerns, and then we're going to open it up for commission discussion. Ask for any questions. I actually asked the same one right before. And then we'll ask for people a chance to reply again on public comment. And we'll be keeping that definitely in 3 minutes. And then we'll close the discussion and we need to make a recommendation.
Okay, make a recommendation on like all the points that they listed.
driving that, I'm telling you that. I was so sad when the city tried to build a bicycle zone just
Anyway, that plant from the church is much nicer than the other. It's really nice. Just to let you know, we'll be starting the meeting in 2 minutes. 2 minutes, the meeting will be beginning again with the continuation of public comments.
It's a two-lane road. I've been driving up there years.
I guess our job to listen to what they say and take our opinions and their recommendations too. So I mean, I don't know, it's hard in front of everybody to like.
Oh, I feel for everyone's position.
To get a consensus.
And it's going to be impossible to make everyone happy. Sure. So it's trying to find a good middle ground and address as many concerns.
I can't stay today. I wasn't really planning to come in, so I suddenly discovered.
And it's tricky to have a discussion about things and with everybody and try. I don't know. Sometimes it's harder when it's up to me.
Well, and that's the suggestion too, Marie, is we could always, think about this.
7 or 8 more?
And put it off for the next PRC meeting. But there's been a lot, this is not a new subject. So and if property is going to be bought, there's never going to be a perfect time. So it's not particularly comfortable. But it's going better than other discussions.
You're doing a very good job, by the way.
Oh,
Does it make
thank you. I'm absolutely terrific.
Okay. You look totally calm. You're doing an awesome job.
Thank you. I'm absolutely great.
You're doing great. She doesn't look nervous, does she? No? You're doing great.
Oh, no. Absolutely terrific. At this time, I'd like to ask everyone to please take a seat, and we'll begin in about 30 seconds, the rest of the public comment. Mr. Euro, who's our next speaker?
Bernardini.
Susan Bernardini, you're up.
Good evening. My name is Susan Bernardini. I've been a resident of Morgan Hill for 46 years. 35 years ago, I was part of a small group, at least when we started, that tried to save El Toro and succeeded. After that, I became the chairperson of the Planning Commission in Morgan Hill, and then we successfully passed Measure E, the first growth control ordinance, I think, in Northern California. That had one purpose in mind. We started because I think at that time the development plan for El Toro was a restaurant at the peak with a tram going up, kind of like that one in Capitola. And we didn't want that to happen. This is no different. This is a development. And I'm saying to myself, why do we save El Toro? A trail that's going to let a fire truck through, which needs to happen, of course, is going to be very visible. There's no real plan for buying the top. You're going to cut it up, the wildlife's going to go away, and that symbol that meant so much to so many people 35 years ago when we saved it has disappeared. You have a lot of talk as though we're going to bring in users from this place and users from that place. What about us? What about the people who live in the neighborhood, off East Main, off Alkire, off West Dunn? What about us? We saved El Toro. And I don't know that we're being considered. It's some major plan, some legacy that, I don't know, Morgan Hill, the city council wants to leave to say, we developed this plan. And there's no comparison to Harvey Bear. This trailhead, these trailheads are all in right hooked up to a residential neighborhood. 10 years ago, there was a fire on El Toro, and I watched it, and the only thing that worked were helicopters above the mountain. And I was so worried that that fire was going to come over that hill and burn my house. And when it hits a residential neighborhood, it's done. It's not Harvey Bear. It's not San Martin. It's your neighborhood. I really ask you to consider those safety issues and do your work ahead of time. Don't be sorry for the consequence later. Thank you.
Persons? Right ahead.
Thank you. My name is Debbie Persons, and I live on Villa Grande. I have just passed out to you a recommendation letter from Byron Foster, California Deputy State Fire Marshal, retired, and current Fire Chief of Walker Lake Fire Department. We spoke with Mr. Foster in regards to the proposed development of the hiking trails on El Toro. I'd just like to read the first paragraph of his letter. It states, "It is a very bad idea to allow or encourage development of a hiking trail in the El Toro Mountains west of Morgan Hill. This area is in an extreme fire hazard zone, as outlined in CAL FIRE's Fire Severity Zone Map." He also states in the second paragraph, he also states in the second paragraph, if you have a wildland-urban interface fire in the El Toro area, your local fire department, along with all nearby CAL FIRE resources, will be stretched to the limit within the first hour. It will take CAL FIRE at least 24 to 48 hours to mobilize a significant firefighting force to combat a fire in this area, and you will likely lose many homes in the process and perhaps the lives of anyone caught on the El Toro mountain hiking. This proposed hiking trail development will affect everyone living in this fire hazard zone, as outlined in some of the copy of maps that I provided for you. By inviting the public through this area will put my home and my family's life at risk, as well as the homes and lives of everyone living within this very high fire hazard severity zone. Currently, there is an unauthorized trail being used daily and nightly that runs up the face of El Toro. The city of Morgan Hill has posted no trespassing signs, which are being ignored. This unauthorized trail is within this very high fire hazard severity zone. This is a major concern, as the public use of this unauthorized trail is currently putting homes and lives at risk. I've been a resident of Morgan Hill for 48 years, and I'd also like to state that our city's landmark, El Toro Mountain, is being defaced by this unauthorized trail, and it is an ugly eyesore to the face of El Toro. Because of the current mountain erosion that is occurring daily on the face of El Toro, and the fire safety concerns as outlined in Mr. Foster's letter, and the fire risks that Morgan Hill residents are now facing. Excuse me, Debbie, you're at 3 minutes. If you'd like to take another minute to present your case, that's fine. I would like to, we're normally going to address all questions and concerns at the end of public comment. However, we are in a drought, and there's grave concern among everyone here, I'm sure, about fire. I would like to know at the end of your speaking if we could just take a break from our normal schedule and ask if our fire department, Mr. Norton, would mind commenting on the concerns that you're addressing. Would that be okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. You have another minute.
Okay, so just in wrapping up, with the fire concerns that I've talked about, as well as in the letter, the continued use of the unauthorized trail, we strongly opposed any proposed hiking trail development on El Toro, and we request that the current unauthorized hiking trail be closed immediately. And in closing, I ask the Parks and Recreation 2 questions. Has everyone who lives within this very high fire hazard severity zone been notified of this proposed development? And secondly, if the city goes through with this proposed development occurring in this high fire hazard zone, is the Parks and Rec Commission and the city, are you prepared to take responsibility of the potential loss of life and property? Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Mr. Norton?
The author is correct that this is a very high fire severity zone, as is most of the WUI areas on the outskirts of the city in all directions. I disagree with their assessment that it would take us 24 to 48 hours to assemble a firefighting force. I would say it would be closer to 4 to 6 hours, and that's the whole idea with the shaded fuel breaks and the increase in the trail, is that would benefit us immensely, in that those were preventative measures that would be put in advance. What currently exists there now, there is nothing to prevent a fire from burning up that whole mountain, and no preventative measures have been put in place so far, and I believe that they would in the future.
I have a quick question. One of the speakers mentioned that the trail would be wide enough to have a fire truck. Is that right? Or?
No, none of those trails would be wide enough. So, what currently exists there now, there's basically two options. Is you put hand crews in there to build line, which would be about 4 foot wide. I don't know what the proposed trail is, but that's where the shaded fuel breaks come in, is that you remove sporadic fuel and limit the amount of, I guess, the BTUs that would come out of that and throw embers. And these are all things that we would do in advance to prevent a rapidly moving fire from going in there. Under ideal conditions, there's nothing that's going to stop a fire from burning that whole mountain. The other option that exists today is that we put a bulldozer over there and run it up that mountain, forever scarring that mountain. So,
Mr. Norton, thank you very much for taking the time to make your comments. And commissioners, I'm sure you all have questions, but we'll later have time for discussion. And to everyone out there in the public, don't like that word, but the public, you know what I mean. After the commission has had their discussion, if anyone would care to make an additional public comment, that will be the time allowed for it.
Brian Faircloth?
Thanks for the ability to come up and chat with you today. I was a little dismayed when I came into the meeting because I was told this was going to be an open forum. My property line is 3/4 bordered by this open space. This is the first formal invitation I've ever received with any activity on the hill regarding trails, and I find out now it's been going on for years. I have attended a couple meetings because by word of mouth I found out about it, and I think it's atrocious that I have 3 minutes, so I won't take any more of my time by boring you. Susan, where are you? I was part of the attack by Susan, Save El Toro. We came up with an agreement. They took property from people and they called it exchange. But the basic thing was is we saved El Toro. At one point, I even told the city, you want my property? Buy it. No, 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 we just don't want you to do anything with it. But I won't bore you with that. But Susan and her group came along. The city actually sued itself because of what they did, and the city actually paid a lawyer, right, to get sued that they settled to save El Toro. Open space, we're going to preserve it forever. There's a difference between open space and public easement. This was designated by the city. When that occurred, we're going to keep it for open space. It wasn't for public access. Now all of a sudden, when the city has control of this property, well, guess what? We can develop the hill. Private people can't have a house there, but we can develop the hill. I heard a speaker earlier about all the wildlife and stuff up there, right? What we're going to do is a lot of those trails were because of the wildlife up there. Then the city started to actually encourage people to violate private property rights and hike on the hill. They advertised, take a hike on the hill, with private property signs all over the place. We talked a little bit about, I live on Dunn Avenue, by the way, at the cul-de-sac. We talked about we're going to put up signage. Well, guess what? There's an iron gate at the end of the cul-de-sac at Dunn Avenue. It's got a private property sign there. People were going around the gate. They put up wings. People tear them down. The city doesn't do nothing but come and put them back up, right? I bet you will never find anybody, any investigation of how they came down.
Excuse me, Brian. I regret to inform you your 3 minutes is up. If you'd like another minute, that'd be fine.
Okay. But my point is that I hear all these comments. I've been there and I can observe. And let me tell you what has happened. Oh, by the way, people with kids, their parents, they see the property sign and says, hey kids, this is going to be a challenge getting over this. Right? And I can tell you what I've documented in the last, I don't know, 3-4 weeks. Okay? They started a fire in that cul-de-sac a couple of weeks ago. And the kids must have panicked because they were there smoking. There's cigarette butts all over the place, broken glass. They must have panicked and got it out quick enough so the hill didn't go. And hikers come up and there's turkeys on our property. They start throwing stones at them, right? And this term, we're going to create a Friends of El Toro, right? As if the rest of us hate El Toro, but we're going to create a.
Brian,
just a minute. Okay. You got to give me some time. And I think the people who are dead set against this for a lot of reasons, and I got a lot of lists. I'm sorry, I didn't have it more organized because I thought it was an open forum. That's what I was told. But I tell you, the true friends of El Toro are the ones that say, don't do this. Leave the wildlife alone. Preserve it like the Save El Toro decision said, open space, no public access.
Brian, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Amy Whalen. I'm a resident on Via Grande. And I would like to say that I am also against the notion of neighborhood access points. I think everyone has brought up excellent points as far as signs already posted being disregarded, gates and property being disregarded. It would be an unfortunate shame to see such a beautiful, long-term established neighborhood with residents who have been there for decades ruined for what? For a trail that isn't necessary. The town already has so many beautiful places that are already up and running and existing. It would be unfortunate to see so much effort be put into a trail that isn't going to add any more that's already on this beautiful city. So I'm against it. And I urge the Parks and Recreation Commissioners to consider heavily what is in front of them tonight. Thank you.
Howard, and I'm sorry, I can't read the last name. Lamke?
My name is Howard Lamke. I have the unfortunate problem that my house is at the very end of West Main Avenue, and I have a flag lot. So I think I have about 150 lineal feet on the blue spot that was on the other map there. And I wanted to express a concern and also alert the majority of the people who are here who are objecting to these trails. For the neighborhood access points, not only do I object to a trail, but I'm concerned that if the primary plan for the parking doesn't go through, which there's all kinds of questions about that, we're talking about putting a parking lot on this neighborhood access points here. It's a perfect spot for it. It would be Plan B. You know that that's what's going to be shoved through. And having a parking lot there would just be a disaster. I mean, it's bad enough having the trail, but the parking lot would be a disaster. I also want to say that I think it's a little disingenuous to tell us that that lot could be developed for houses. We went through this thing in a lawsuit a number of years ago when they talked about buying these properties and all of the other development was going to go there. Developing, I'm a building contractor. I'd buy it if I could put 3 houses on it. You know, trust me. It would require building knuckles on both of those streets. It's just a massive amount of money to develop those 3 lots. I think it's crazy. So.
Thank you. Could you say the name again, please?
Joe McMorrow.
All right, thanks for the opportunity tonight to have my 3 minutes. I think that you guys did a really good job, at least an admirable attempt, at least to address some of the issues we brought up in the past. I think it was about 4 years ago that I went to a city council meeting and really reiterated fire safety and overall safety of our neighborhood being our #1 risk for these trails. Today, I live at the end of Via Grande, and today we have just a large number of people coming across our neighborhood. They park in front of our house, and as the study had indicated, there were 70 on a Saturday, and the study was only from 8 to 5. Someone else had mentioned, we're concerned about the volumes of people that will come and hike this trail once it's advertised, and we highlighted the same thing. That study was only done at one access point up at the top of Via Grande. We open this up to the maps, and people actually know that this is a destination place. It's going to get a lot higher, and there's no way to enforce parking. There's no way to keep my 2 young girls safe in the front yard with droves of people walking by all day. And there's no way to control a fire from burning down my house in 4 to 6 hours. That is an extreme fire hazard. And as much as I think you guys have done a great job trying to address some of the parking issues and bathroom facilities, and you've got plans for that, overall, we're exploiting the monument for this town. It really should be preserved. It would be a shame to see that mountain burn and a front end loader or whatever drive a scar down the center of it to stop the mountain. It'd be scarred for a decade. It would take forever to heal. I think it's a bad idea. I think most people here, at least everyone that's spoken before me, also says that. I encourage the Parks and Recreation Committee it feels like there's an agenda here, and you guys are definitely well prepared. Everyone's aligned on what questions to prime each other with. It all went really well at the onset. Please listen to what we're saying. And if you take it to the council as a recommendation, me and anyone else who will join us will go and have our 3 minutes with the council as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Brian Burnside.
also a resident in Villa Grande. Second house from the end. Very simply, I'm a little bit ticked off. One of the things that the officer did not mention was the hit and run that just occurred on me a few days ago. We don't have surveillance. We have strangers coming up. Nobody knows who they are. If people aren't out at the time things happen, things like the other neighbor's dog got hit, a dead cat, our pets, our property, are all at risk. Does the city want to take responsibility for that? Like everybody's brought up very good points. Fire is a big issue. If anybody remembers the fire on the back mountains over there, how badly it burned and got away. Well, has anybody climbed El Toro lately? When it's windy? Wind it's got to be one of the worst enemies of fire. Jumping fire breaks like nothing you ever saw. Well, I'm concerned about that too. And all the other issues that everybody else has brought up. So, thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Nice new digs, incidentally. Morgan Hill resident, and I feel like I'm walking into the lion's den, but I'm going to admit something to you guys that right in front of the cops, I've poached that trail a few times with my kids over the years. Love the view. As we climbed that trail, I definitely realized that there was a poacher's trail. It was not a good trail. It's never been a good trail. But you know what? The reality is that people go up that. And the reality is that no matter what we do, people are going to go up that hill. They will find a different way. They'll find a different access. And what's being proposed to the city of Morgan Hill and residents, and including the West Dunn people, is an alternative, a more safe alternative for these things to go on that are going to go on. The reality is it is going to go on. The icon that we have, everyone loves. And the view is amazing. And that is the booty when you go up to the top. I'm not supporting the access trail points. I think the primary one is the smartest idea to keep everyone out of the neighborhoods. But to try and wall that mountain off is just not going to work.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Tim Eads. I'm 63 years old. I've lived at the end of John Telfer Drive off of Main, well, all my life. I've seen El Toro used. I've used it myself many times as a kid. But what you're proposing here is, well, if you like El Toro, or as my great-grandfather named it, Murphy's Peak, or his people named it Murphy's Peak. If you like the way it looks now, get a good look. Because once you cut the trails in, they're in. And if they start off a single track trail, which it sounded like the fireman said they're going to be 4 feet wide. That's what I thought. At 4 feet wide, that's big enough for a quad. So, you know, we're going to have access to quads, people trying to maintain it with quads. Now we have equipment, vehicles. It's going to be cut up, and once it's cut up, there's no going back. It's going to be a big, ugly mess. The next problem is at the end of Main, or it turns into John Telfer, where your access point is, it's a blind corner right now. With people going in and out of there, we're going to have an accident, and there's no place to park there as it is. So they're not going to park down here. They're going to want to park next to the trail as close as they can. Just like somebody else said, it's a hiking trail. You should hike the extra quarter mile to get to the access point, but they're not going to do that. I use all the trails in the area. the Bear Ranch, Hunting Hollow, Go Park, and it always amazes me that they want to park their car right next to the entrance to the trail. I mean, they're there to hike. So, and then the fire, of course, the fire is an issue. But anyway, let's. Why do we want to tear up this hill? Let's leave it the way it is, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
So while I warm up here, I want to know how come my husband got to speak before me when I put my name in first.
If that's a serious question,
Okay. All right. So I want you to know that I've worked as a firefighter for the state of California, so my words have a small amount of experience. And I object to the idea that access will increase fire hazards. They will help to fight fire. I'd like to have more information concerning the slide that showed the history of fires on the mountain. How many of these fires were sparked by lightning, and how many by human error or intent? I think that's important information for everybody to know as this process goes on. I know fires are fires, and they need to be extinguished. But to clarify about how these fires start seems to be important to me. I'd like to suggest that when this group discusses or gets questions about the visual scars of the existing trail and those proposed, that I think it would be beneficial for everybody to have a scale to understand how wide the existing or improved new trails will be, a la the question that you had earlier. Please restore that ugly scar of an illegitimate trail and potential stream bed if it ever rains again. And I want you all to know that I believe access should be authorized, Andrea, monitored, and safe. And I'll be the first one to sign up for that Friends of El Toro group, open it up, and see how undesirable it becomes to the renegade visitors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Mark Knudsen. I'm a West Dunn resident. I'm happy to see all my friends and neighbors here tonight. It's just like every day, so it's great. I just want to say, I'll be short, I'm opposed to the neighborhood access. I don't think it's a good idea. This is also is the first time I've heard about the neighborhood access. I've heard about a main trailhead in the past, but this is the very first time I've heard about neighborhood access. I'm opposed. People come through my yard quite often already. We see people coming up in cars, walking, dogs, trash, etc. daily, and I don't think it's a good idea. I really urge the commission to reject it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Denise McElhenney, and I have been a resident here for 39 years. And I also believe that El Toro is certainly a beautiful place to be. And our community right now, every single person gets to enjoy it. They get to enjoy the view. They get to, even if they never go up to the top of the mountain, they can always enjoy the pristine El Toro. And there was Save El Toro. It's a beautiful mountain, and I think that to change it and to make it accessible to hikers, when you have all of these comments about the safety, the fire, the garbage, and also the disregard for personal property. Now, we have a property owner here who hasn't been contacted by EPA, and I've attended other meetings, and it's like you're encroaching on personal property, not just the person that owns the top of the hill, but also all the neighborhood is being subjected to this plan, which very few people even had impact or any influence on it. And I think when we look at something like this, we should take into consideration, are we infringing on personal property or, the property rights of an individual? And for, one of the meetings I went to, and I also heard a comment right now, oh, it's there and people are going to climb it. No matter what you're going to do, you're going to climb it. And it's like someone saying to me, well, you have a house, you have a front door, I can go right into it. We have to have respect for personal property. And I think that in our society, that is also, it's a constitutional right. And by not respecting people's personal the property owners in this respect, I think that it's what are we doing? Are we going to we're starting at the base and you're going to creep up and just keep taking it by eminent domain? I mean, I think that I just am very disappointed to see our city, who went to such lengths to save this property, is now going to try to open it up to whom? We have alternatives. There's so many beautiful places to hike. There's so many parks, so many trails. Do we have to take the risk of lighting that trail, that the trail is on fire, or the hill on fire, and losing that to our community? Losing El Toro for all the people in our town that enjoy it every single day. And that's my comment. And I'm just very sad that we also spent the money. Now, how much? So here you have $1 million, right?
Excuse me, Denise.
$1 million.
Excuse me one moment.
Okay,
That's
$1 million.
That's 3 minutes. If you'd like to take another minute, you may.
Okay. Here we have this budget here. What are we talking about this budget? You have $1 million. I would like to know, when I looked on the website, I saw nothing that talked about how much you've spent to date and where we are on that $1 million. And if you're thinking about acquiring personal property, well, it's going to cost a lot more than $1 million. But I think that it just doesn't sound like a very wise plan to me, and I'll be very disappointed to see that mountain be gone forward with this trails, because I think we will lose it.
Thank you.
Michael Orozco.
Good evening. My name is Michael Orozco. I'm a 5-year resident of Morgan Hill. I'm your neighbor here on Main, a relative newcomer, obviously, to everyone who's been speaking. When I came here, I was attracted to this town, this community, and I really love it. And I looked at that mountain, and I told my daughter, boy, I can't wait to climb that mountain. I'm probably the only resident in here who hasn't, because I immediately found out that, there were private property rights, there was no real access to it. And so I decided not to climb it, out of respect to you, my neighbors. The closest I've been to the top is through Google Earth, looking down on the community through the satellite image. I made it to Mount Everest too one time. It was pretty good. Give it a try. I want to bring up a couple points. Talking about fire. I really would like to see somebody do a little research on the Oakland Hills fire and the fuel stacking and lack of burn off or even fuel control. Right now, I don't believe we have a fuel control plan for the hill. I think it's just accumulating more and more fuel. Eventually, a fire will happen, and it'll be out of control. We're talking about some kind of fuel plan here on this trail, this proposed trail system. Another issue that was discussed was some of the amenities of having a trail like this are, people being able to hike it and have a little better healthy healthy lifestyle. I recently went through some really serious health issues. I had open heart surgery at 42, and I don't know if many of you have seen, but I've cut my own trail around the city here, and I keep on hiking around that little half-mile track right outside my house to do my walking. I look forward to an opportunity to climb that mountain legally and with respect to my neighbors. The last point is I see something that I don't believe is being taken advantage of and isn't in the plan. And I'd like to see some outreach to the VTA to maybe change Route 16 such that it makes the primary trailhead a stop and a key focus. And further, it runs over to the other side, over by Anderson Reservoir, as another key point, as a trail access for the rest of the community to be able to jump on the VTA, go to that trail access, no need for cars to park, and have a little more respect for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no additional cards.
In case anyone didn't hear that, because I almost missed it, there is no additional public. Oh, we have another speaker.
Bill Hassling.
Hi, I'm Bill Hessling. I was born and raised here, and I have actually climbed Murphy's Peak. Not El Toro, as you guys call it, but as we called it when we were kids, is Murphy's Peak. It's a tradition in this town that if you lived here for a long time, you would once in your life climb Murphy's Peak. So I don't think that's ever going to stop. But the problem is instead of having 3 trails going up there and creating more scars across the mountain, why don't we just have the one trail? We don't need to make it a attraction. It's just for people who want to climb, give them access. One point, here you go, you want to climb the hill, climb it, be done with it. Just like the gentleman just a minute ago. He wants to climb the hill. Well, give him access. You don't need to make it so elaborate and give access points in all these neighborhoods. There still needs to be the emergency access. That's a good, from done, but they don't need to have public access. One point, you're controlling the people going up the hill. You limit their access to any other parts of the trail so that there's less potential for fire hazard or whatever hazards, less places for your volunteers to patrol. And it will probably cut your budget a little bit too, saves you some money. I think that's the best plan to do.
Thank you. At this time, we'll ask our specialists, Open Space Authority, Public Works, Fire Department, and Police Department to comment on concerns. Can we please start with our Police Department? Jerry Newmeyer.
Sir, you had mentioned you're a hit and run. I apologize. I didn't have that as part of my stats, so I'm not aware of that, the circumstances behind that. And so I apologize. Okay. I think that many of the issues that the residents have voiced are valid, and I think that something that public safety we can work together with to mitigate any issues or concerns that they might have in the future if the commission decides to go further with it to City Council.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from the Fire Department, Jamie Norton.
Yeah, as I stated in the beginning when we went through the PowerPoint, there was no statistical data that said that opening this up to hikers would create more fires. And I used the example of Holiday Lakes, Anderson, Co Park, the Bear, all of those. There are fires there, and I'm not saying this is not going to happen here. I'm just saying that the measures that we're trying to put in place with fuel management is trying to prevent the catastrophe from happening. Thank you.
Could you speak to the zone? The zone? Could you put this map up and
show people and speak to the zone?
High fire zone.
Do we have that?
The fire slide.
It's just the one that we got in our hand. Do you want us to put up that?
Yes, the one that the city adopted.
Did you have a specific question on that?
We'd like you to speak to that in regards to all the houses that surround the area, if there was a fire.
Area in red is
The
considered
area in
high
red that's
severity
designated.
zone.
Right.
If there's any risk assessment management plan.
There always is. There's a thing called defensible space that homeowners are mandated to perform, which is 100 feet of separation from the fuels. This could certainly be part of the fuel management project, and one of the requirements that the city has done.
Did any houses burn during those fires?
Not that I'm aware of.
That's the only spot in the valley.
Can I comment on
It's
the
on.
last statement by the fire chief? That whole hill burnt in the early 80s. There were only 2 houses there. I saved my house because I was home. The fire truck actually couldn't even come up Dunn Avenue because of the flames. Yeah, they did. They blamed it on PG&E, but I saw the kids start it. Yep.
Okay. All right, and now we're going to move. Thank you. Is there anything else that the fire department would like to comment on?
No, I just wasn't sure what he wanted me to speak to as far as the very high fire hazard zone.
All right, since we're discussing the trails, may I request that we please have the visual that was up there previously? And would anyone from Community Services, Mr. Yulo or Mr. Gianni, care to speak?
Have taken down notes for the few questions that were asked during comments. I don't know if maybe we go through the other departments. If we missed any, I can pull those up at the end. Or do you want me to pull them now? So one of the questions was how wide are the trails going to be? So I think maybe our team from the Open Space Authority or Public Works Department could address that, although there has been not a design put together yet, but it may be typically in an area that the Open Space Authority does of that size, what would a trail normally look like?
We follow pretty much national trail standards, design standards, so you try and maintain a very low grade, so they're not steep hills like you see on the face of the mountain right now, and you try to put in the narrowest trail possible for the trail use, so probably in the 3-foot wide range, maybe 4 feet. They're revegetated along the edges once the trail goes in. I think one of the things that's brought up, and it's understandable to perhaps look at the blue line on the mountain and see that as a scar. But as I think one of the other speakers mentioned earlier on, the trail system that you see on there will almost entirely be using existing pathways and roads. One of the first things that we wanted to do when we got involved in this project with the city was our intent to restore the scar that goes up the face of the mountain, which you can see from the Mount Hamilton range across the valley. That contributes to sedimentation and erosion, and we would like to see that get the community involved, and the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts and the Historic Society, and get that restored. The other thing is, I think what was not mentioned tonight, is the Open Space Authority has a very impressive cadre of about 250 volunteers from across the community who come out. These are retired people. These are students. These are people who love their community and want to share the open space. They're the first ones to come out and volunteer. So we hold volunteer trainings. We have trail patrols. We have environmental education events out on the site. These are of and by and for the community. We do not anticipate that open space on El Toro, which it already is open space. It was purchased by both the city and the Open Space Authority with the eventual intent that the public could enjoy it, both scenically and if you are fit enough to actually walk on it. So the intent is to share this across the community. We anticipate it will be primarily used by the community. And there's a way to start this trail process on the mountain in a very measured way, with environmental education, with getting the neighbors involved. That's what we do. That's what open space districts and land trusts and conservation organizations do all over the Bay Area. You go to any county, any community in the 9-county Bay Area, and you'll see partnerships between open space districts and community groups and land trusts. And this is not for the open space district to do or the city to do. This is for the community to do together. So we would have programs, we would talk about the phasing of the trail, it would be in newsletters, we'd be inviting people to come out and get involved. I also want to echo what was said by the fire official. There will be fires. We are reading about them every day in the paper. We're in a drought situation. We will have fires. We want to have safe access for our public safety officials, and we want safety for the users who will be up there on the mountain. And so this trail system is designed both for public enjoyment, but also for emergency access. So I think just kind of to sum up, what is being proposed here by any stretch of the imagination is an improvement over what we have or what we could have in the future. Because what we'll have in the future without any kind of work here by the authority or the city or the neighborhoods or the volunteers is a scar that continues to erode away the face of the mountain, the potential for fire that can't be adequately serviced by our fire safety officials, unauthorized use, and trash. What we do is to work with the community to formalize and make sure that the folks that are using the trails are respectful of private property rights, don't leave trash, and are out there for good intentions. So I think what we're proposing here is going to be an improvement over what we have today, and we hope and trust that we'll work with the community to make that come to fruition.
I took down a couple more questions, and one of the next questions, and I'll try and answer it, and I know our Public Works Department can jump into, was why do we need the secondary access trails? Why is that in the proposal? There's multiple reasons, but a couple that were outlined in the strategy that David mentioned was the health and wellness component of people being able to walk the trails, and the connectivity between the trails, where if there's one single trail access, you won't have the ability to walk from a neighborhood through to connect to another trail. In no way disregarding the comments about the safety of or the issues that the neighborhoods have brought up about having trails in their neighborhood, just pointing out the reasons why there are multiple access points versus a single access point. And the same thing that was brought up before and was mentioned during the presentation, to distribute the access to the trail to multiple points, so it's not one single impact on one single point, while still maintaining that connectivity, so people have the opportunity to walk from one area to another, and incentivize the use without necessarily getting into a car to drive to an access point that's farther away, reaching one of the secondary goals, which is, helping the environment. So those are some of the reasons why we had the secondary access point. I don't know if I missed anything else. And then one other question that I noted down was, would the city be taking property by eminent domain? And I think our Public Works Director could answer that one best. But
yeah, thank you, Chris. No, there would not be eminent domain used. We would only work with willing buyers or willing sellers. And while I've got the floor, there was a comment made, or a question: how much have we spent of the $1 million?
About 3 or 4 years ago, it's been a little while when we first planned this, we hired a firm called Bellinger Foster to help us plan a trail system and establish some of the guidelines for a trail up there. That was about, it's been a while, I want to say like $30,000 or $40,000. But since then, really have not spent any money other than staff time looking into this, and staff follows up on it because it's a council directive, and it was also put in the capital improvement program. So we just follow up with what gets approved in that program.
One other question that I noted or two more questions. Has everyone been notified of the development? And as a city, we've done our best to reach out to the contacts we have through direct mail, through our website, through email, and we did try and put the lead time to this meeting as far forward as possible. We actually had a previous meeting to set this meeting, and then put the strategy out multiple weeks in advance to try and do the best to notify everyone, because we do feel it's important. So we're doing our best to get that notice out. And then the last question I took down was, is the Parks and Rec Commission or the city in general prepared to take on liability? And obviously, if we're working on the trail and developing a public facility, as I believe the Open Space Authority would say, we understand that there's going to be liability in maintaining and operating a public facility, and that definitely is understood. And those were all the questions I had noted. Did you have one other question?
There's going to be a tremendous amount of questions. I request that you please fill out more public comment forms, and after the commission has an opportunity to ask their questions, they may be the same, then we'll open it again before making a final decision to public comment.
Chair Leiser, maybe one recommendation, since we have two people that are asking to have a final question. I'd say we have the final questions asked now, answer the questions, and then have the commission deliberate.
Sure, that makes sense. I'm just trying to follow.
You'd be able to close public comment after these two questions, if you feel that's appropriate.
I think that's totally appropriate, and if I didn't, so I'm sorry. We're changing that. Now, if anyone would like to make public comment, please do so.
I'm still filling out my...
Oh, that's fine. While the forms are being...
You don't need to wait for a form.
Yeah, go ahead. You can give us a form afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead. Go up to the podium.
Oh, okay.
And then when you can just hand us a form afterwards.
While she's walking up, so everyone's clear, this is the time if you have additional public comment, and then after this, we'll be closing it.
Thank you. Again, I'm Susan Bernardini. I have to address the comments made by the representative today from the Open Space Authority. She said that, in fact, the Open Space Authority and the trails that they're involved in and use the community and involve the community. We are the community. We're here today. I feel like you didn't hear a thing we said. This is the community. I don't know where your volunteers are going to come from. We've heard a few people say, gee, I'd like that one trail to go up there. But everything you said seems so hypothetical, so pie in the sky, when you have all of the neighborhoods here saying, why are you doing it in the neighborhood? I don't think you heard it, and I'm offended that you don't think we're the community.
I'm sorry, I have no idea what this says.
Oh, Wes Hillman? Okay, sorry about that. That's my signature on my check, so nobody can read it. But anyway, I live up on Dunn Avenue, and I've been a resident here for almost 30 years. And, you know, the one question that I don't think has been addressed, although it's been spoke to, but again, more of a pie-in-the-sky type way, which is how are you going to control the parking on the streets in the neighborhood? I know you're going to encourage them to park at certain places, but how are you going to enforce that the Alkire and Dunn Avenue and Main Avenue do not become parking lots with cars lined up and down the street? How is that going to be enforced? And the other thing is, you you talk about volunteers that are going to, help police make everybody behave properly. But, as, we know that there's a lot of people that would, want to go up on the hills and want to go partying as well. They'll bring their 6-pack of beer and their friends and they'll hoop and holler. And so how is that all going to be monitored as far as the behavior of the people that are going up on the hill and as far as mitigating the parking? How is that going to be enforced? Are you going to have permits for the people that are parking there, or or do we call the police and they start towing cars away, some cars that we don't notice? So I think that needs to be addressed, is on how are you going to control that?
Brian Faircloth?
Tony, could I just...
No, it's up to the chair.
No, we're going to take this, in the interest of, there's a lot, I'm sure everyone would like to speak again, but if you haven't submitted your form, it's going to be closed.
Brian Faircloth again, and it's just too bad this turned out from a forum to a formal meeting, because that's how it was advertised, as a forum. So you got to really listen to the government employees. They're very nice people. We love them all. But you got to really watch what they say. If this lady from the open space, very nice lady, she appears to be, I don't know her, but keep in mind when they talked about getting to the peak and talking about negotiating with landowners, listen to what she said. We will get to the peak, because they're going to do this hook or crook. And listen to Susan, the community, right? Now you say the community's begging for this. The community, I don't know how many thousand strong belong to that Save El Toro Association, but it's a hell of a lot more at the time, because I was the target of them, right? I can tell you that they were stronger than the community you're talking about now that wants to send, you say 10 people up there, but they're coming from all over now. It's pie in the sky. You're going to ruin the hill. The city sued itself, right, because they thought they made a mistake by approving an assessment district that, by the way, stopped about 9 houses, with the owners giving the city the rest of the property up to the peak, right? The city sued itself, paid a lawyer. We're going to preserve it. There was no talk. They preserved it for open space. There was absolutely no talk, but now that we got it, we're going to run tons of people up there, equipment up there. We're going to just take it away from open space, and we're going to have full public access. You talk about signage. There's tons of signage now. Private property, not a through street. They're coming up Dunn Avenue to Cul-de-sac, parking there all the time. The city cannot police it, right? They cannot do it. No matter what we do. I've called the police. The police come, they find people there, they talk to them, and they were about 1 foot, 2 feet from my fence, my back fence, with ain't even on a trail out of the cul-de-sac. Called the police came, but the kids see them, so they get down in the car.
Excuse me, Brian, you have about 30 seconds.
Thank you. The police come, by that time, because the kids are smart, they know the cops are coming, no matter how fast the cops respond. They're down in the cul-de-sac. They'll talk to them, kids will tell them some story, they'll release. I've even gone to the police the next day. What was the deal? These people are on my property. Oh, no big deal, don't worry about it. It can't be policed. They're in a hell of a predicament.
Excuse me, I regret to tell you that's 3 minutes.
Okay, but I hope that we do something to let the landowners, the community, right, who says don't do this, not the folks who, it's my job to make sure it happens. They're not the community.
Okay, thank you. There were a few additional concerns. If the police department or open space authority or anyone else sitting here would like to comment on it before we move on to commission discussion.
I think we should maybe address the specific questions that were asked by the second speaker. I think they were the questions regarding controlling parking was the primary question that was put together, and I think any of us could jump in, and the access strategy outlined that piece, and that was the point of multiple access points so that we would spread out the impact as well as creating a primary trailhead with parking. So that was the key component of the strategy to address that, which we've heard different ideas as well that weren't in the strategy. I think there's been discussion of parking limitations and signage, that sort of thing as well. That's not in the strategy at that time, but it's been brought up. But the key points to the strategy was the multiple access points. I don't know if our Public Works Department or Police Department has anything else to add.
Well, as far as parking for the police department, we need an actual lawful code that we can enforce. As of right now, there are no parking signs on Via Grande or El Caire that allow us to issue citations. There are other issues, abandoned vehicle. If they block a driveway, of course, then we can take enforcement action. Carl had mentioned the plan doesn't include any kind of permitted parking. I know that if it were, this was public trails, our calls for service I'm sure would increase, and depending on we'd have to go case by case on what kind of calls they would be. You'd mentioned somebody partying up there. It would depend on our resources of our officers that are available to be able to get up there. And oftentimes we do get some calls for people that are accessing the trails late at night, and oftentimes if we do have the resources, they're gone by the time we get there. And that is something that we would definitely have to research and be prepared for additional calls for service, and because of the number of people that may visit those trails.
If I could add on to that too. Yes, if we wanted to do a restricted parking program, it certainly could be done. It would need to be set up. It would need to be, we have to work with the property owners who live in that area to make sure that, their vehicles are able to, access the street and park out on the street while others are not. So it's not an easy thing to set up, and it would take some administration and of course the enforcement as well. Could it be done? Yes, it could.
Okay, now we're going to open this up for commission discussion, and commissioners, please ask if you have any questions with the panel that's here.
I actually have a question for the Open Space Authority, and maybe the city too, is Carl Biarchi. I can't visualize the primary trailhead, the access in terms of parking, entry, what parts that the Open Space Authority might have control of in terms of building, that site or developing that site for public use. Can you maybe explain that? And if there might be a visual too, maybe that might help too.
Thank you. Through the chair, the Open Space Authority has been in discussions for some time now with West Hills Church for potential parking, permanent parking lot on the driveway, corner of the driveway there on DeWitt Avenue. And those discussions are ongoing. There are a couple alternatives that we are discussing, but we don't have anything to present this evening. But I think it's fair to say that what the city has represented there, a primary trailhead with parking, restrooms, and water is accurate. That's what we would be attempting to put there.
So I guess what I'm trying to see is how many people or how many vehicles could, park there, without overflow or going into the streets. Do they have any plans for that, or is that in development, or?
Yeah, we'd have to, I think another representative from the city mentioned this, we'd have to take a look at how many cars we could accommodate, and part of that is dependent on the amount of land that the West Hills Church would be willing to either sell or to lease to the Open Space Authority, and then we'll figure out exactly how many. We'd want to maximize the number of parking spaces we could put there.
So it's very, very tentative right now about what you could do with that right now.
Yeah.
Richard saying.
Yeah.
Any other questions or discussion?
If there was only one primary access or one access through the primary location off DeWitt, and some of the neighborhood accesses were only emergency access, now there's no official access, but people still go through, what will be done if those get converted to emergency access to keep people from going through those locations?
Well, I think what would have to be done, you'd have to have signage and some gates. And we've heard some discussion about this evening from the residents who live near the Dunn Gate, and it's, people try to get around it. But to answer your question, if it's emergency access, we'd sign it as emergency access. We'd say no public access otherwise.
On Dunn, you're talking about on Dunn, no public access, emergency only, is that what you said?
No, the question was if we had one primary access point and all the others that perhaps are shown on there are for emergency access only, what would the city do? We would put signs up saying emergency access only, no public access.
Okay.
And, sorry, one more. If there was only one public access off of the primary location off of DeWitt, and all the 4 neighborhood accesses were just emergency access, how would that affect? Obviously, the trail wouldn't come all the way down. How would it affect the trail scheme up top?
If we just had the one access, we would have to redesign the trail, obviously. We'd not be showing access points to, if that was the ultimate desire, we wouldn't include those access points into the neighborhoods.
Has that been a plan at all? Has there any drawings considering just that?
That hasn't been developed.
Okay, so now I believe, unless the commissioners have any more questions, we need to have a discussion and then make a motion, because we've been asked from council to, at the end of this meeting, to make a recommendation on the direction for the El Toro Trail access strategy. Part of the slides we saw, I'd like for you to please review your notes and your comments from what everyone has spoken about and concerns that have been addressed. And I'd also appreciate it if you could please review staff recommendations, which included recommending approving the access strategy. I believe everybody can read it. I don't need to read it. So.
Start discussion now, or?
Yes, let's
So
jump on in, please.
The access strategy that's being put forward, it has 13 points to it. So I don't know if we want to go over those point by point and agree with some or disagree with other ones. That's what we're trying to put forward?
I was looking at the staff recommendations.
The staff recommendation is...
Chris, could you please...
The staff recommendation, it talks about the access strategy, recommend the access strategy.
All right, so we
need... 13 points, I believe.
All right, so...
So maybe if we go by those point by point?
That sounds fine. Commissioner Kelly, do you care to take the lead in going through this?
So point number 1, it says creating multiple trail access points. And maybe this is on the PowerPoint, if we could flip back to it. I think it's about the 12th slide. Access strategy approach. So that one right there. So the first one, creating multiple trail access points. Spread access to minimize impacts to any one neighborhood.
Discussion?
Discussion on the multiple access points.
I can understand the concern that people have with the multiple access points. However, I could also see the advantage of walking through the different neighborhoods, and unfortunately, through having loops. So I think that it may be important to discuss the parking concerns. Let's start down at one end and work forward. Commissioner Lucicero. Chris, what would you say?
I have concerns with the Dunn Avenue. It seems to me that the consensus of the public, the community, is it's too narrow and too crowded, and it would create more problems it's going to solve. The other three streets seem to have similar problems, and I don't feel that the community has been listened to by the planning groups, because speaker after speaker got up and basically said they had no input. So I'm concerned.
Echoing the comments of one speaker, I think there should be access, but it should be authorized, safe, and monitored. I think if we only have that one primary access, it's not going to have less people come. I don't think by having additional accesses, it's going to draw more people. It will limit, walking. If someone lives in that neighborhood and they want to hike up the hill, they're going to have to walk further to do it legally. But if you're going to hike, I think you could already walk to the main trail access. So I'd be in favor of just having the one primary trailhead at the DeWitt location, and the other neighborhood access would just be emergency access.
I have one other concern. When the gentleman talked about the ATVs going up there, I can see that to be going to be a huge problem if that's not curtailed, because once one person does it, you're going to have hundreds do it. And I know I worked with young people long enough, they like the challenge. Once one person does it, they're going to be more and more do it.
Just for clarification, at this point, there's no discussion of opening the trails to ATVs.
No, he just says that the width of it will attract it.
But right now we're not talking about ATV or even mountain biking. Commissioners?
Before this meeting we had tonight. Before this meeting tonight, I took the time to drive to each access point and noticed that all three access points were very narrow roads. Not enough space for a lot of people. And I agree to have just one access point at the church if that's possible.
So people are going to climb this mountain regardless. It's a, I don't want to say temptation, but it's a goal for people to see Morgan Hill from the top or as far high as they can go. In terms of the access, I think we need just one point, DeWitt, and make it clear with signs in the different neighborhoods. If you want to climb the mountain, go to DeWitt, maybe some signage or maps or something that shows how to get there, and that's it.
In looking at all the information and, I took careful notes and listened to the comments tonight. I guess as I had access to this information, we were given access to this before the meeting so we could study it and look at it. And initially, my thought was I thought the plan of having multiple access points was a good idea. But I also really feel strongly in listening to the residents and the concerns about people being in the neighborhoods and that they're narrow roads and we don't want trash and people on those narrow streets. And I've kind of changed my opinion to think that the one access also might be a better plan to really focus on that. Sorry, one other comment is, I know that the multiple trail access points, would provide maybe people making loops, but a lot of the trails around here, and I frequent many of the trails, and when I go to different parks, that have trails, if there are loops, I park in one place, and if there is a parking place, most people will drive to a trail and park right at the trailhead. And they're not going to park at one place and do that and exit at another. So although it does provide access for multiple places, if we can control the parking, because as Commissioner Cheek said, people are going to climb it. And if we can control it more, the parking at one entrance, I think that's more likely what people will do, and they won't enter one place and exit at another.
Well, now it's time for my comment. And while I'd like to completely agree with a one trail access, and I very much respect many of the people that spoke this evening and their concerns with people walking through the neighborhood, I can see the benefit for the community for having multiple access trails. And I do think that people have been hiking up El Toro, unfortunately, for years, saying that they can't do it. And this has been private property. It's been continually trespassed along. I do think, though, that it is, the parking concerns need to be addressed. I am in favor of multiple access trails, and I think that guidelines need to be developed for restricted permit parking on residential streets for Dunn, Alcare, Villa Grande, and Main that would only allow residents and their guests to park there. No public parking at all unless it's one of their guests, and only emergency access on Dunn because of the narrow street. So I'm proposing to consider multiple access trails from the neighborhood access points with restricted parking, only emergency access from Dunn, that being closed off, and that would make another loop. But I'm only one of 6 opinions here. Continue the discussion.
On that one, or should we, the next one corresponds number 2 about creating one primary trailhead?
I have another comment. I like the idea of the multiple trails, but if we have one access point and then maybe cut across to then have the multiple trails and bypass the multiple access points would be.
What are you proposing there?
I'm proposing having one access point and then cutting across the base of El Toro and connecting with the extra trails, instead of having the access points in the neighborhoods.
So what I understand, you want a kind of a loop on the trail itself, but not accessing the streets.
Right.
So we could recommend maybe, or one recommendation would be that one primary access, and then reconfigure by staff the trails, what trails could be put in without the neighborhood access, but still have multiple trails on El Toro.
So one access point from the wet, and then there would be a loop on the trail on the mountain.
Mm-hmm. And then feathers off into separate trails.
But I think that sounds great. However, I think if you have that, you're going to still have people that are going to try and access the trail from where it's right now put on for neighborhood access points. And isn't it better to have that monitored and guidelined than to have people going?
I think we'd have it monitored by, they would be upgraded emergency access only. Perhaps it's going to be, bigger fences. It's going to be the same issue that they have now, but it's going to be a perhaps more secure gate. There is, if everyone that climbs it right now is climbing it illegally. If there's one primary access, the people that are climbing it illegally are going to have one primary access they're directed to. The only thing I see we're losing without that neighborhood access is people in that area neighborhood be able to walk there and get up. Anyone else driving there is just going to drive a few blocks further to the main access.
So you're proposing then to have a loop that would go up with open space trail, cut over to the city trail, and then loop around and not go down?
Yeah, I would propose having that one main trail access off of DeWitt and send this back to city staff to see what other trails are feasible without that neighborhood access.
Maybe we could quickly ask our team in Public Works and the Open Space Authority if there's a feasibility to that concept with people leaving from the DeWitt site and then crossing over what I'm hearing is lower on the mountain to kind of reach where the blue trail is without starting at the lower access sites.
And that would give people a loop.
To make a loop in there on that side. I think it's what I'm hearing.
They're going to walk it.
So starting here, this is the main access point, and then cutting across this way, and then going up here, cutting across this way. So it's a big loop, except you go to the top, and it bypasses these neighborhood access points. So this way right here, you'd have an option to go the OSA route or take a route this way.
So what you're saying is there'd basically be an option of either the full loop, or you could go over to City Trail emergency access down, but not going on to Dunn, or over to the City Trail.
Right, to keep all those trails there, still proposed.
But not connecting.
So there'd be a fork right there where people can go either up
Correct.
or go to the north.
I think if you did that, you would not want to go all the way down to Dunn, and there'd have to be signs preventing people from knowing that they can't access it.
Can I make a comment? So if we were going to recommend the one trail access, one possible recommendation is that some of these private streets where people are already accessing the trails, if we maybe can prevent some of that by doing some permit parking and for residents, and that would discourage others from parking there. And if there's going to be access at just one location and everyone knows where that is, that if there were some permit parking in the other areas that people are disturbing the residents, that it would encourage anyone else that's wanting to access the trails, it would encourage them to park at the main location.
I think it's a good idea because then it gives people options for walking, keeps people out of the neighborhoods, and you still give them loops to walk that are controlled and below the line, and a chance for the existing trail that's going up there to restore itself with habitat restoration.
One of our neighbors commented there's a deep ravine there. That main access trail over to Down Avenue.
So David, do you have any observations about doing that, what Mary suggested?
The person in the back, I believe there is a deep ravine. It would probably be pretty hard to cut a trail like that. And I'm not sure if we own that property or not. I'd really have to look at that more closely.
Is there any feasibility of doing a similar loop, trail?
Yeah, I'd have to study that option.
Since there have been so many parking concerns and trail access concerns addressed in the neighborhood, and this is something that is going to impact their neighborhood, is it possible for us to make a recommendation, Chris, to council to, that we're requesting public, looking at other possible routes?
Yeah, absolutely. As a recommendation, the commission, you can recommend whatever you'd like. I think I'd be a little wary just after David's comments to think that we can make a larger significant loop up there, crossing the water tank road. There'll be issues because that'll cross the trail that the road that goes directly up from Dunn. If we're not trying to use that road, there'll be some issues with that, as well as the ravine that was talked about before you get there. Could there be a loop built? I'm not a trail expert, but likely. But it wouldn't be a significant extension of the trail, as significant of an extension of the trail as the connection. So I wouldn't count on building a longer loop to replace what would be taken out from the Via Grande, Main, and Alkire access per se. But you could definitely recommend that we review it. And we'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I think that would be a good recommendation. Send it back to city staff to have them review what the trail I think that would be a good, perhaps, recommendation to city staff to see what trails system could be put in place if there was only one main access. A lot of people spoke or the people that spoke that they wanted to go to the top, it was go to the top and come back. I think that could be accomplished without having all the neighborhood accesses. The main access off of DeWitt, and perhaps city staff could explore what other trail systems could be put in place without needing the neighborhood access.
So I think this is a good opportunity to kind of look back as well as what we're trying to accomplish tonight, which is the access strategy. So if your recommendation, really, if you focus on the access points with a side recommendation to review the trail development piece, that could definitely be part of it, because as was talked about before, there's going to be many check-in processes on this trail, and the design and development of the trail will be another process in itself. So with that recommendation, we could do that, put that towards the design and development process while still moving forward with your recommendation to the council on the access strategy.
Is it possible to also have parking restrictions, to look at what type of parking restrictions can be put up in the neighborhood to prevent people from?
You can absolutely make that recommendation to the council. That is not the recommendation from staff.
I understand.
Just further discussion on this, the 13 points. I would either de-emphasize or get rid of point number 1, and I agree with the next 3 points, number 2, 3, and 4. They're creating one primary trailhead. Focus location of primary trailhead on DeWitt.
Bring that screen up
So it's the one with the first 4 points.
I like your idea of the loop.
So on this, as far as putting forward to the council, I would get rid of number 1, the creating multiple trail access points. I agree with the next 3, so 2, 3, and 4, the creating one primary trailhead off of DeWitt, focus location of primary trailhead off of DeWitt, promoting the trail system as a healthy recreation alternative for Morgan Hill residents. So I agree with 2, 3, and 4. And if we move on to the next one, disagree with number 3 about creating one recessed trailhead. I agree. Yeah, sorry, number 5. Number 6, I agree with that. Actively working with effective neighborhoods to create an access system that respects the privacy of those residents. So that's perhaps just the emergency access. Number 7, I disagree with using the city parking lot. It would just be the main access. Number 8, the first half I agree with. Locate the restroom at the primary trailhead, but not utilizing the restrooms at the library or civic center, because that would encourage people going through the neighborhood access. I agree with number 9 through 13. I agree with all those to be put forward to the council.
Senator Kelly, would you care to, Is there any more discussion on this, or would you care to put that into a motion?
I, in general, echo those comments and recommendations. I think that as far as number 6 is concerned, actively working with affected neighborhoods to maybe, as this discussion continues, to look at the impact of parking, unauthorized parking, whether it's to make it, permit only, and that may not be necessary, but just to look at the impact on those unauthorized access areas, but to look at how the impact of those on the residents, even though they're not being formally used.
Yeah, and not living in a permitted residence, I don't know what the impact is would be to the owners, property owners, or their guests. So that could also be something put to city. That could be something recommended to city council to see what that impact would be and get some community feedback if there was access, how they would feel about being in a restricted parking area.
Or maybe if we're talking now about just putting a loop in, that there just needs to be what's being used right now to access the trail would need to be blocked off with a sign and directions, basically educating people on the one access point. And with a sign letting them know that they can get to this area above with a loop, but they need to follow the trail.
Yeah, so I think that's a good idea. If there's no trespassing signs, but if someone wants to go up to the top, the only way to do it is to trespass. If someone walked up to the gate and wanted to get to the top and they saw a sign, no trespassing, but there is an alternate location on DeWitt, I think people would be more likely to go there, so it might ease with some of that burden of the trespassing that's going on right now.
Okay. Perhaps the direction could be given to looking into, consequences of trespassing or fining people. But I don't know what would be involved with that with the police department.
We'd have to work with the city attorney, because it would be, if it were city property, to ensure that whatever the fines that would be imposed, that the city attorney, we would actually be able to do something with it.
It takes 21 days to break a bad habit. I think it'd take a little bit longer than this since it's been going on for a while. But
yes, it'll take a long time. But
yeah.
Martin Murphy.
I know.
It's a start.
But redirecting and educating people on where the access points would be and loops that they could do.
Should we try to form a recommendation based on these 13? Or?
I would just like to make sure that no other commissioners have any questions or comments that they want to make before, and if they're okay with Commissioner Kelly taking the lead on forming a motion.
No, I don't have any other comments.
Okay, Commissioner Kelly?
I have the notes. May I take a stab at?
Sure,
Make sure I
go over it again if you like.
Why don't we try it? Let me try.
Okay, go ahead.
I believe the suggested motion would be to create a trail access strategy that consists of what's presented as numbers 2, 3, 4, 6, the first half of number 8, and 9 through 13.
Yeah, I think that's good. Is there any other
I think
part that we missed? The permitting part, if that is an option.
It's taking a look. I believe we want to talk about to explore whether or not we need to have permitted.
I'm going to recommend, because this is really a...
Marty, can you use the microphone?
Oh, sorry. I'm going to recommend, because this is really a meeting about access points and not parking, to focus on the access points, and then if the parking's a issue later on, that's something maybe the city council needs to do. I don't think it's a park and recreations issue.
And then one thing... Go ahead.
However, I do want to point out that in the access strategy approach, they talked about recessed trailhead, and I think that actually needs to be kept in to emphasize that we want to make sure that any trails that are built are recessed and as blend in as much as possible.
I think with the motion that's on the table, the location of the recessed trailhead, you're cutting those neighborhood access points out. There'd be no need, or there'd be no place for a recessed trailhead because with the existing motion, because that's cutting those out.
Oh, okay.
And then I think one thing we talked about that's not in here is sending back to staff to look at multiple trails off of that one trailhead. I don't know if we could add that to number 2.
I think, and you can, Commissioner Kelly, I think you can also make a secondary motion or note it to staff that as we bring back the design process for the trails, that's what you're looking for. I think that's duly noted by our public works staff, because I think that's a secondary component versus the primary goal of what we're looking at right now is the access strategy. So either way is fine. We can add it, but that will be coming back anyways.
Okay, great.
Any more discussion?
No, I think it's a great idea.
Okay, so I'll motion the access strategy plan with the amendments that Mr. Yulo said. The taking out number 1, having 2, 3, and 4, 6, the first half of 8, and then 9 through 13.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Any abstain? Motion carries. I'd like to thank everyone for attending the meeting today and articulating their concerns. Thank you very much.